Daniel got the promotion on a Thursday. By Saturday, he was already thinking about the next one. He knew this about himself. He had known it for years, in the foggy way you know things that are inconvenient to examine clearly. He was not unaware of the pattern. He simply did not know what to do with the awareness except hold it quietly and wait for the next milestone to make it irrelevant. The milestones kept not making it irrelevant. He was 36 years old, and he had been operating for his entire adult life on a single organizing principle that felt so natural he had never identified it as a principle. It was simply the air he breathed. The principle was this: I will be satisfied when I finish school, when I get the first job, when I get the better job, when I reach this salary, when I reach this title, when I buy the apartment, when I pay off the apartment, when I get promoted, when I get promoted again. He had done all of these things. He was doing all of these things. He had advanced at a rate that his younger self would have considered extraordinary. By 36, he was a senior manager at a firm he respected, earning more than he had imagined earning at this age, living in an apartment that was genuinely beautiful, married to a woman he genuinely loved. His life, by every measure he had used to define success when he was 22 and making his first plans, was successful. And yet, the Saturday after the promotion, sitting in the apartment with the morning light doing something extraordinary on the walls, and his wife Priya asleep in the next room, and a cup of coffee going warm in his hand, he felt something he could not account for. Not unhappiness. He did not want to call it unhappiness. An absence. The specific absence of the feeling he had been building toward, the satisfaction, the sense of arrival, the feeling of having reached the place that would make the reaching worthwhile. He had been promised this feeling by the logic of the life he was living. Reach the milestone and feel it. He had reached the milestone. He did not feel it. He felt the next milestone. Already, on Saturday morning, 2 days after the promotion, he was planning the approach to the one above it, calculating the timeline, identifying the gaps, already in motion toward the next thing without having fully stood still in the current one. He went for a walk. He did not take his phone. This was not a decision about digital wellness or mindfulness or any of the things he had read about and not implemented. He simply left it on the counter because he was out the door before he thought to pick it up. He walked for an hour without a destination. He had not done this in a long time. His walks usually had purpose, to the gym, to a meeting, from one place to another. Walking without a destination felt slightly illegitimate, like time not accounted for. He walked anyway. At some point he sat down on a bench in a small park he passed regularly and never stopped in. He sat. He watched a child learn to ride a bike. The child was maybe 6 years old. Her father ran alongside her, holding the back of the seat. She was terrified and laughing at the same time. She fell twice, got back on twice. On the third attempt, the father let go without her noticing, and she rode 6 feet on her own, before realizing and looking back and seeing that she had done it. The face she made. Daniel had not seen a face make that expression in a long time. The expression of being exactly where she was, of the present moment being fully sufficient. Not a step toward the next thing, not progress toward a milestone. The thing itself, complete. He sat on the bench for a while after they left. He thought about his father, Marcus, who had died 3 years ago after a short illness that had taken everyone by surprise, including Marcus himself, who had been planning a trip he had been postponing for 15 years. His father had been a man of magnificent future plans. When things settle down, he would say. When the kids are grown. When the mortgage is done. When retirement comes. When the right time arrives. The right time had not arrived before the illness. Daniel had thought about this a great deal in the year after his father died, and then, somewhere in the second year, had stopped thinking about it as directly. It had gone into the category of things understood but not acted upon, which is one of the most common categories in most people's lives, and one of the most quietly dangerous. He sat on the bench and thought about his father and the trip and the 15 years of right time arriving that had not arrived. He thought about something he had read once, from an old piece of wisdom he could not precisely source. A teaching about a man who spent his life walking toward the horizon. Every morning he would walk east, toward the point where the sky met the earth. He walked all day. He walked for years. He was a diligent walker, steady and committed, never stopping, always moving forward. And the horizon was always exactly as far away as it had been when he started, because the horizon, by its nature, is not a place you can reach. It is a relationship between where you are and where you are looking. It moves as you move. It recedes as you advance. No amount of walking closes the distance, because the distance is not a fixed gap between 2 points. It is the permanent space between the present and the imagined future. The man in the story had walked his entire life toward a horizon he could never reach. He had never stopped to notice that the ground beneath his feet was also interesting, that the places he had passed through were also worth being in. That arrival was never going to feel like arrival, because the moment you arrive somewhere, the horizon simply moves. Daniel looked at the small park, at the empty space where the child had been riding the bike. He thought about the face she had made. He thought about Saturday morning and the coffee going warm and the light on the walls, and Priya asleep in the next room. He had been in the middle of something extraordinarily good, and he had spent it planning the next thing. He went home. Priya was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her tea, reading something. He sat down across from her. She looked up. He said, "I want to tell you something, and I need you to not respond with any kind of plan or next steps." She looked at him. Then she put her book down. He said, "I think I have never really stopped to be here, in any of the places I have reached. I have been moving toward the next thing for so long that I do not know what it feels like to actually arrive somewhere." She was quiet. He said, "I got promoted Thursday, and by Saturday I was planning the promotion after that. And I am sitting here, and the apartment is beautiful, and you are here, and I am 36. And I think I have spent most of the last decade somewhere slightly ahead of where I actually was." Priya looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "I know. I have been watching you do this for 6 years." He looked at her. "I didn't know how to say it," she said. "It didn't feel like my place to say it." He nodded. "I need to figure out how to stop," he said. She reached across the table and put her hand on his. "You don't need to figure out how to stop," she said. "You just need to notice when you're doing it. That's all it is at first. Just notice." He looked at her hand on his. He had not looked at it properly in a long time. Not really looked. The way you look at something when you are fully where you are. He looked at it now. He started a practice that was not a dramatic or visible practice. It produced no measurable output. It had no milestone attached to it. It could not go on a resume or be described in a promotion application. He started asking himself, once a day, not what am I building toward, but what is actually here right now that I have not fully seen. Not to stop building. He was a builder by nature, and that was not the thing to change, but to also stop, occasionally, and notice the ground beneath his feet, the light on the walls on Saturday morning, the coffee before it went cold, the face of the child on the bike, Priya's hand on the table. He thought about his father and the 15-year postponed trip. He booked a trip for the two of them. Not a big trip, a weekend somewhere neither of them had been. Not the right time, not when things settled. Now, they went. It was an ordinary weekend in many ways. Good food, a long walk, one afternoon where it rained and they stayed inside and read in the same room without talking. He did not spend the weekend planning the next trip. He was, for most of it, simply where he was. He did not know how extraordinary this was until he arrived home Sunday evening and realized that the weekend had left something behind in him that the previous months had not. Not a memory of what he had done, a memory of where he had been, fully, both feet on the ground, not moving toward the horizon, just standing somewhere real, for long enough to know he had been there. He was still ambitious, still building, still planning, but he had found the difference between walking toward the horizon and walking through the landscape. The horizon was still there. It would always be there. But the landscape, the actual ground, the actual people, the actual morning light on actual walls, that was only available to someone who had stopped long enough to notice it. He was learning to stop, not permanently, just long enough to notice that the life he was building was also already worth living. Not later, now, here, with the coffee still warm,